That's for sure.
Good evening and welcome everyone to the City Council chambers here tonight. I'm Bill Sanford with the City of Sylvania. A little bit different from a traditional public meeting that would be run by council. This is a meeting for the public, just to understand, so we can explain what the a TIF is and how it could possibly work here in the City of Sylvania. This was a recommendation of possibility of establishing a TIF when we did our downtown master plan. So this was the next step, and then the city is working with Glenn Grisdale from Reveille down in Bowling Green, who's a consultant in this type of work, and he's helped council and myself understand it a little bit better. And tonight we want to provide info about the TIF. Want to hear what questions you have about it, and council will be in the same situation that they'll be able to ask some questions, and they can answer questions that you might have for them too. So it's still, we're in this, nothing's set yet of what we're going to do. Tonight we're using an example of the streetscape because that's something that the city wants to do, and it would meet the requirement of a project that could be funded through a TIF. So it's all an example. Nothing, again, has been decided. The council's going to decide that. But I think what we hear tonight from you, questions, is this something we want to move forward with? And I think those are some of the things we hope to get answered. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Glenn, and we'll get started here. He's got a little presentation, then we're going to open it up for questions. When we do go to questions, because we are, with Chuck's help, this will be available on YouTube afterwards, so we can share that with other people that probably couldn't come tonight. We would like to do just, if you have a question, your name, either your address of your business or property would help us, and then you can ask your question. Glenn.
All right, thank you. My name is Glenn Grisdale, and I will be dancing the cha-cha-cha. In my spare time, I've got book on dancing with the car. Tonight I'll be dancing and working with this whiteboard. But Bill did give you kind of an overview of why we're here. Just for the sake of, I guess, context for me, how many of you in attendance are downtown property owners? Okay, so most of you. Did you participate at all in the downtown master plan process? Were you aware of it? Okay. So most of you kind of understand why we're here, understand the context of why we're here. Okay. That's always important to know. I always start this because I think my dad passed away, not even knowing what I did for a living. So I always open up every presentation asking folks if they understand why. So with that, I will, let's see here. So, all right. So today what I'd like to do is go over the project. Most of you kind of understand the project of why we're here. Talk to you quickly about the importance of that project in the community, and then give you kind of an overview of how the TIF works and what it is actually. So this project basically is in support of the downtown master plan. I believe you finished it last year. And the consultants looked at the downtown, they looked at the beauty of your downtown, and looked at ways of continuing the synergy in the downtown, and building the momentum to help continue the synergy that you have. You have a beautiful downtown, and like most downtowns, that synergy is supported by the public realm space. So what the city wants to do is look for ways to enhance that public realm space. When they got with me, they were thinking about kicking around public realm space that may cost $3 million. I know Bill and City Council have yet to really figure out what a dollar amount is. And it's important to kind of figure out what types of downtown investments that you want to make. Because at the end of the day, that public realm space should be something that you program to help make your spaces more synergetic with raising the types of investments in way of additional traffic to your spaces and things like that you need. So right now, the city is looking at about $3 million worth improvements to the downtown, which we know is a good nucleus in the community. These public realm improvements, everyone believes, will help the downtown be more attractive and also help to retain and attract additional residents and to bring additional investments into downtown. So last month or the month before, the city made a presentation to the regional chamber. They are looking to augment their general fund revenues with a potential state budget to get some additional dollars to help draw down the cost of this project. And there's a gap of about $880,000 or more. And so the benefit of this TIF is that it allows you to improve the public realm space. And the reason why that's important is the public realm space does bring this energy to the downtown. There has been a target selected for this downtown area, which is, I think, within the vicinity of Maplewood, Erie Street, and also, Maplewood, Erie Street. And the benefit of this is to promote additional property investments, to help stimulate some additional public realm space renovation, and to help promote ADA accessibility to about 30 businesses that have some additional ADA improvements that might be needed within that public realm area. There has been some deteriorating supportive infrastructure there, like the water and sewer. And over the past several years, City Council has allocated about $2 million or more to improve that space. And you can see kind of that space, those improvements in the street lighting, the sidewalks, and things like that. So, in helping the community retain their competitive edge, they are looking to the TIF to be a program to raise some additional revenue. And so I think this is the potential TIF district. You can see it goes from Monroe all the way over to about here, up to Erie, and down to pick up Sono, and then the southern Main Street. We've identified, I think, about 128 parcels that are commercial and industrial in this area, of which the natural valuation could be grabbed. So the benefits of this to the community is that it does help to promote additional private sector investments. You've seen the SOMO project go up, and the SOMO had some really good metrics, about 206 apartments, anticipated about 400 investments with about $36 million of new investments in the downtown. It's hoped that this additional public space, realm space improvement would help to get these folks to the downtown safer, and also help to promote additional redevelopment in this target area. And you can see evidence of private sector improvements like Inside 5, Element 1, 1, 2. There's a variety of others that have property owners that have improved their spaces in the last several years. So there were several pictures there. There's ADA issues. You see, just like in downtown Perrysburg, they're addressing this issue right now. We assist them with economic development, and they've got a variety of properties in their downtown, and they've got a study right now trying to figure out where all the ADA accessibility issues are, and working with the property owners in trying to raise the same sorts of cash to help offset those improvement costs. And then there's just the need to continue the placemaking momentum. You'll see at some point in time when streetlights went in, there's new sidewalks and pavers and things like that. They're really attractive to people who want to come to downtown, shop and spend money. So this would help with that. So how the TIF works. So in the state of Ohio, there are 3 sets of taxes. There's sales taxes, there's income taxes, and there's property taxes. And so when the community wants to look to do generate additional revenue to offset their public coffers, there's only 3 areas that they could really go to. Counties are the only entity in Ohio that are allowed to raise sales taxes. And then you have property taxes that are largely generated, the county, school districts, and the city get a small portion of the property taxes. And then, of course, there are income taxes, which in Ohio, a majority of that money goes to cities. Portion of it goes to the county, a small portion can go elsewhere in other taxing districts. But the benefit of the TIF is that it's been used widely in the state of Ohio since the late 1970s. And it's there to help fund public infrastructure improvements. So roads, water and sewer, bridges, police stations, fire stations, even parking garages. And then you've got all the public realm spaces like parks and trails, sidewalks. All those things can be benefited from a TIF. Perrysburg has Wells Commons. That was a private sector pushed TIF, but there's also TIFs in Northwood. The former Woodville Mall is currently right now underway with a TIF. We're helping them right now. The Crossroads in Rossford, that area, that's all that public infrastructure back there was funded with the TIF. And then there's another portion in Oregon, in Northwood, it's funded by TIF. The interchange off of Door Street there, all of that is being funded by a TIF. They're hoping that the new development that's going to go on the property, where the set of properties around it, that new valuation, a portion of that value is going to be captured to pay down the bill, put all of that in, the roundabouts, and then part of the expressway, the interchange there. So there's a lot of communities that use the program and they use it very well. How it works is it locks in the taxable real value, the real value at the time of the authorization of the registration. So locks in that value. And then the additional assessed valuation beyond the locking time is redirected back to finance construction of all that overgrown space. So it's important to note that at the time, the property value locked in, the assessed valuation is locked in. The valuation is continued to be paid on those, so the parcels will continue to pay their taxes normally. It's just the new lock-in value, the portion of it is redirected back to pay for improvements that are specifically benefiting property owners in this area. Okay, so normally what you would do is you would pay taxes normally, and that money would go to anywhere else in the city, right? In this case, city council wants to pay for public realm space and capture the increased valuation in a certain period of time, over a certain period of time, to specifically benefit just this footprint, okay? And what that will do is hopefully it will increase the additional synergy. That'll make people more excited to come downtown to visit those public spaces and things like that. So under Ohio Revised Code, communities are allowed to exempt up to 100% for 30 years, but they have to work with the school districts to make sure that a certain percentage of that tax goes back to schools, because the schools are very vital in the community, and there's that checks and balances. Now, the community can exempt up to 75% of that new increased valuation for not more than 10 years, and they can do it by just sending a coordination letter to the schools. We've been working with, we met with the superintendent back in January, and she's been notified. We worked with her, the treasurer, and Matt Fisher, who was their counsel, and they're aware of what we want to do, and they are in favor of it. So that's generally how the TIF works. So you've got the baseline property. Over a certain period of time, your properties are assessed every 3 years, okay? The county auditor they're required every 3 years to do a triennial reassessment. And then every 10 years, they do a complete drive-by, they hire someone, and those values are readjusted. And then there's a tax rate and then you pay the taxes that way. So how this would work, if the city moves forward, all the 128 parcels that are in that target area, they're going to continue to pay taxes, and they're going to continue to go to the general needs of the community. The increased valuation, the natural increase, so every 3 years, they might say, you know, your property that's $100,000 is now $102,000. 75% of that additional natural increase is going to get sent back. It's going to get captured by the county auditor, and it's going to be sent back to the city for them to pay off the streetlights, the sidewalks, all this stuff in your public realm area. And then when the bill is paid off, that TIF goes away. The goal is that there'll be a natural increase over a 10-year period that may amount to about $880,000, and that will be enough to close the gap between what they have in their general revenues and what they might get from the state. And so there's that third portion, and that is the natural increase in the taxes. So we looked at, and I tried to model that $880,000 based upon, let's see here. Yeah, so I tried to model it. I looked at from 2004 to 2020, and I looked at the commercial increase. So there's about 63 million of commercial and industrial citywide. In 2020, there was about $98 million in commercial and industrial citywide. And so you can kind of look at the changes of how they have been flowed. And so we say that in the 10-year period from the lock-in, a 5% increase over 10 years may raise $220,000. If in the 10-year period, there's generally a 20% increase, natural increase in those property valuations in that target area, it may generate $880,000. If it raises less, well, then the city will have to pull more money out of their general revenues, right? So that's kind of how the program works. And the key thing to focus in on is that it's not a new tax. It's just that the natural increase in the valuation of your property, rather than go in the general needs bucket, goes into a bucket that's specifically taxed with you. So so the next steps, the city could decide to use the TIF or decide not to. If no, you do nothing. If yes, the next steps would be to figure out a list of exactly what they want to do and the costs, and then figure out the appropriate time frame. We might find that $880,000 is not enough, then maybe they need to capture more value. And if that's the case, we talk to the schools, and they said, yeah, we'd be fine with 100% of that value for 15 years, maybe, going back to the city. Or maybe 100% for 30 years, but we want some payments going back to the schools, and that's the negotiation to figure out what that is. But the goal is to figure out exactly what those projects are going to be, what the costs are going to be, and then figure out if the time frame is enough to generate enough natural value. And then work with the schools, pass legislation, file the legislation with the county and the state of Ohio. And then what they would do is just complete the projects. And then over the course of that time period, the natural increase so all those 128 parcels in there will have a separate code in the county auditor's database. And they'll know any sort of natural increase, a certain percentage, that check will get mailed back to the city, and the city will use that money to pay down whatever it's spent for these project costs. So that is how the math works. So I'm sure. Great slides you want me to put on. That's my song and dance. I'm sure there's plenty of questions.
Is that 20% over the 10-year time period, or that's not 20% a year?
Oh, no.
Because most of us had
Yeah.
a 15% increase in valuation this last time. That seemed like that's about
Yeah.
the average.
Glenn, oh, excuse me, just, couple quick, points again. That table there is tough to read. I will make this available, the presentation, and get this to everybody, through emails or you can contact office, we will get that to everybody. And again, Kevin, if you could just, we want you to state your name and your address, and then, so you can be on record.
Oh, yeah, I'm Kevin Armstrong, 6742 Maplewood.
Thank you.
So to get to your question, this last, I think folks were aware this last full assessment 2020 was a humdinger. Your taxes went up.
The last two have been
Yeah,
pretty significant.
that's been bad. Yeah, so the math kind of gets funny because you are allowed. So if it goes up 20% over a certain period of time, not in any given year, we're just hoping the natural increase would be 20% over that 10-year period to capture about 80.
Right, I was just trying to, in my mind, think that
Yeah.
that was a sensible number, that it would go up over that time.
Yeah, no, you can see here, like in '04, so like we were trickling up to like, '08, and then you see that the property valuations really change. They kind of went down, and then they started going back up. And so, they actually, commercial properties hit a low of 79 million, and then kind of rocketed back up. Then it started printing cheap money. Yeah. Yes.
Kathy McGuire, 392 Monroe Street. Without a list of the projects, yeah, I'm actually I'm on Monroe Street. Who made the decision on where the properties fell in this TIF to?
That is the real question.
I can probably answer that. We looked at the downtown and just extending from, this hasn't been set yet. This was just an example of what it could be. So we wanted to extend, because that's really the gateway into our downtown, is from the expressway to downtown.
But why weren't the businesses from the expressway included in it?
I can't even hear you.
Why weren't the businesses, you got Chow's and then you got the cemetery, and those aren't included in it?
Well, they probably could be. I think we just wanted to give an example.
Oh,
The
okay.
cemetery is not, but all the businesses, but your point about Chow is probably the only thing that's missing on that.
The answer is we did that. We talked about it. That's the map we came up with. It's not done. It's a first. Yeah, this is, you're right about Chow. We ought to have that in here.
Yeah, and
And-
you got, there's another business right there too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And we could be north of Monroe. We were, I think we were steering clear of the cemetery.
There are just a few, very, very few residential properties, and that's one of the reasons I'm sitting here, is very specifically Maplewood on this side of Maplewood is in the TIF. It's one of the only sections that still is all zoned residential. And then there's a few of them down on South Main that look like they're mostly owned by developers that are included in this. But everything else in this boundary is currently zoned commercial. So why are we picking up the residential properties in there?
Yeah, so we have to make sure that we have a contiguous boundary for the TIF. The only valuation that's going to be captured is on the commercial and the industrial. The residential taxes will get paid normally. They will not be part of the TIF.
But just add that too, Kevin, that side of the area, again, that we're suggesting is because that was the area that we used for the market study for downtown.
No, that was not included in that. So,
Area that we're marking.
no, that residential side of Maplewood was not included in it.
Is there a- we talked about it?
Yeah, that's the
This is row of houses right over here. This is this row house, right? And the issue we have with it is that we've been battling with the city for years over their desire to take over that block as a commercial block. It's been going on for years, and the mayor could attest to that. And, so if you bring them into the TIF, is this is why to make them sign on as commercial properties,
Zoning in this area specifically commercial?
No.
It's not residential. Okay.
And the same with some of it on South Main. Now, a lot of those properties I know are owned by developers. Very that bump out part down there.
Yeah.
Some of that's commercial and some of it is residential. Still, but most of the entire rest of the boundary, to my knowledge, has been commercial for a long time. But there's, us on Maple, we feel there's a little bit of a target on our back with.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're right. We right here. Yeah. Okay. So logically, this would be an easy fix.
Most of the rest of that block is municipal, except for that. Because it's municipal building, court building, all of that is, takes up the rest of the block to most street.
Let me guess. Yes, ma'am.
Elaine McAdasher and 5778 Summit Street. I'm in B3 zone, but I'm a resident. We don't use our property for any business at all and don't intend to. Several houses on Summit Street, similar to what Mr. Armstrong saying, are strictly residents. Is there the ability to have those that treat our property as residences not be considered part of the TIF, because we don't have anyone to pass off that additional cost to.
There is no additional cost. That hasn't been said yet clearly. The TIF does not increase your property taxes in any way.
Yeah. If you're a resident and you have a residential property, your taxes will not be affected by this. Your taxes could generally go up over time, but the increased valuation would not come back to benefit this area. Only
Can
the
you
commercial.
explain this part of the letter then? In some instances, the increase in tax burden on surrounding non-TIF properties may become unsustainable. Cities often partially or fully abate increase in nearby property taxes for life of the TIF. And that's just my ignorance. I don't know what this means.
What letter? What's the property owner? Which part? Oh, the info sheet?
Yeah, then go sheet. There be a chance of inflated property values in order to pay for this TIF.
No,
That would be unsustainable by a regular resident. That's my concern.
Well, wait, I wouldn't say no to that. I mean, the fact is that the goal is to increase the value of our downtown community. And if you are a resident in the downtown community and all the property values around you are going up, there is a reasonable chance that your property value will also go up and your tax burden would go up as part of that. But that would not, that increased tax burden would not come back to the city. It would continue to be distributed to the other taxing entities. What the market, if you look at the market study that was done, most important thing about the market study, about the downtown study that we did, is the demographic analysis of the potential economic impact just based upon population locale. If you're a resident in our downtown, there isn't, what that market study says is that there are going to be business development, natural economic business development incentives to be interested in your property. You don't have, we don't have a plan to develop anything and move anybody. But what will happen is when you look at the demographics of our community, there's a very real chance that developers will be interested in your resident. I mean, that's just the reality. And if we did nothing, if we didn't do any of this, that's happening right now because of where people live in Sylvania, the economic buying power of the people in Sylvania, and the desirability of developing in our downtown. So, you know, I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you no, because as that economic pressure develops, the auditor is gonna look at your house and say it's worth more. So that's gonna happen whether we do this or not. That's out there right now. And we didn't make up those numbers in that study. If you go and look at the study, it tells you why that economic development pressure exists in our community. And it's real, it's there today, and it's going to probably multiply in the years to come.
Just maybe to add on that, Doug, that being in or out of TIF will not affect whether your property taxes will go up. That's done by the auditor. What the TIF does is try to capture the increase so we can use that increase for a project within the area that we define as the TIF area.
So the TIF is not gonna touch the taxes at all. The taxes are just gonna go through the normal auditor process.
Right.
Yeah. And there's also a normal
So it just
process.
gives, in my opinion, it just gives the city a little bit more money to do improvements.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, takes the taxes that I would normally be paying.
Right.
Is gonna give them the ability to improve.
That's exactly right. It allows us to keep the property taxes already being paid here in Sylvania, rather than going to the library or the zoo or to the county. It just gives us a chance to take those same dollars. It doesn't increase taxes at all. It gives us control in using them in the TIF zone. And I am one of those property owners. I got a letter just like you did. I'm on River Crossing, my office building, and I have the same questions you do. I don't want my taxes to go any higher than they already are.
Maybe, could you just explain what that means, just briefly?
The last is,
Maybe everyone else knows what.
so this is from the study. That was from our study. You can, one of the considerations is that what you refer to some instances of increased tax burden on surrounding non-TIF properties may become unsustainable. Cities often partially or fully abate increased nearby property tax burdens for the life of TIF. That was right from our study.
And I think that's exactly what Mr. Hanem was trying to say.
Right.
The TIF may increase property values, but you're going to pay it whether you're in the TIF or not.
And so there is a mechanism for that.
Yeah.
If anyone that feels like their property taxes any 3 years has gone up too much, it's called board revision. You get a letter in by the end of, I think you have to get it in by the end of the year, and they have to see you by March 30th. And you go before the board revision, I think it's 3 to 5 people, and you tell them as to why you think the property valuation is too high. So there's always that process for anyone.
Glenn, maybe over here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Drew Cheney. I live at 3736 Summit Street, the Southview Apartments. And I guess the thing I don't understand is this economic development of downtowns, this TIF area, why is it not broader than just that economic area? Why doesn't it go into all the actual letter? That's the way we are going to benefit from this versus TIF. What's going on with that? Why isn't a broader area, you could capture more monies But you limit it to just the areas that you want to develop. I
Yes,
don't
sir.
understand that.
So we have to limit, we have to pick a boundary that seems the natural and logical boundary for where the infrastructure needs to go.
Yeah, but you're just picking the area that's in the boundary when it's meant to be a development for the city of Sylvania area. And you limit it to just a real small area. I don't understand why this isn't a broad thing throughout Sylvania. And, you know, capture more money that way. We said, well, we're going to take, I don't know which boundaries are for the city. But
I think, Joe, in some of the examples that Glenn was talking about, there was redevelopment going on in those areas. And how did you pay for some of the public improvements that needed to support the new development in some of the area? That's where you see the TIFs come from, those particular things. And then, so it's just that particular area, we're limited as to how many acres the total TIF would be. So you just wouldn't have a TIF
That's right.
for the whole city. It's too big. So if we have to find an area, and this is where there's gonna be, we anticipate, and Glenn showed how there has been some redevelopment, we anticipate more redevelopment, so that the values would change, and then we could, you know, capture those funds and then use them for a project right in that area.
By state law, there is a limitation of 300 acres.
Pardon?
By state law, we are limited to 300 acres
By whose standard?
by the state of Ohio law enabling a TIF district. I don't know how many acres we have in this map.
Another question, why isn't this cemetery involved in this?
Because the property tax is so low in that area per acre.
I mean, you can draw the line anywhere you want.
We could, yes.
But isn't the line based then on where the money can be spent? So if we make it super big, then the money could get used other places too, or we want it to be happening down.
Jen, do we tell
Yeah,
you?
sorry. I have 564 Summit Street is the building I own, but I also work at 5675 Main Street. So yeah, but so isn't like this area that we're doing, then that's where the money can get used.
Correct.
So if we make it much bigger, then the money could be used like down West Road, like we want it to be right here.
And the point is, the money is only being used on the commercial properties. That's the only money you're getting is from commercial properties, correct?
That's
The
right.
residential properties aren't giving anything to it anyway.
Right,
So
the
you wanna get
cemetery,
as many commercial properties in full as possible.
the cemetery is zoned residential. That's why it's not in it. And Mr. Armstrong, we should probably take those residential properties out of the map because they don't contribute to it anyways. And there's no ploy, there's no connection between changing your zoning and being in the TIF.
Well, but it's, you know, since we're all new to this, the
Yep.
idea of the TIF, I think, sounds great.
Yeah.
I think it's a good way to put money into our downtown. We know that the downtown always needs some money and some additional financing. And if we can pay for it that way instead of pulling it all out of the general fund, it seems like there's a definite plus to that. I don't have, you know, but just with all of the sort of issues we've had on Maplewood, I just want to be clear that we're not trying to rezone some of this property commercially against their.
Your point is very well taken, sir. I agree.
Can we answer the question, please?
What was the question?
Can you take the residential houses out of this?
Is there any question to rezone those houses as commercial?
We could, but you know what? People, there are gonna be people coming to buy your properties.
Well, they can keep asking. Yeah.
I understand, but you know, I'm just gonna tell you that people are going to be interested in economic developers. That's what our study tells us. Now, we can take it out,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
but that doesn't change the
Free
price.
market, not a problem.
Sir,
Okay, good.
we just have your name and address.
Andrew Hill, 6745 Maplewood.
Thank you.
Bill, you have somebody.
Over here.
And I just wanted to say too, Ashley Bailey, 671 Maplewood Avenue. If by chance to residential does stay in the TIF, which that would be a good idea. Would there be a chance that us on Maplewood, I know about the redevelopment, but would there be a chance that that redevelopment, our houses would be included in that? Not from the outside development, but if our houses, if this stays and our side of Maplewood is included, is there a chance that our houses would be included in that redevelopment? Taking our side down.
So you're saying would you benefit in ways of public improvements like the sidewalk and street lighting, stuff like that?
If the property was in
Yeah.
the TIF, yes, you could, if it's not in the TIF, then there would not be
That
these
would
TIF dollars.
be the outside developers that may. be interested. If, so if we're taking out of that, TIF, there's a chance the outside developers might still be interested.
And I take it then you're on the section of Maplewood that Kevin was talking about?
So we're, yeah.
Well, then if we, as we suggested, if we took that out, then, and the streetscape right now is Main Street. And, you know, part of Main Street, the south end of Main Street was done a couple of years ago. We're gonna do Maplewood to the railroad tracks. Kevin, correct me? And that's where it'll stop, and then that'll already be done. And when we do the streetscape on Main Street will be the main, and then the infrastructure and things underneath, that'll be on Main Street, right in the middle of what we're proposing here is a TIF district. That'll be the area that'll get the improvement.
It's important to understand that the developer, to your question, if I heard it correctly, they're not going to care whether it's in the TIF or outside the TIF. That will make no difference to them whatsoever.
If they're interested in that.
Pardon?
So based on that, why don't we include a few more houses in the TIF so we can put more money in the TIF?
Well, but Kevin, we can't because residential customers don't, there's no benefit to including the residential houses in the TIF area because there's no incremental revenue.
We've got to
Because I
include,
don't mind if some of my taxes went to it, I'm not against that.
I understand, as long as it doesn't cost you any more.
The last 2-3 years, I think we've all felt the pain.
We obviously can't control that piece. We're just trying to make hay while the sun shines.
And I try not to
I
complain.
think Angela has a question.
Nancy Christensen, 5774 Main Street. My business is at the very north end of that, here in Maine. And I just wondered if through this program, do we as business owners have a say kind of where the development happens and what happens? Because we feel at our end, sometimes we're left out because we're more houses. We're not really included in the downtown. And so when anything happens, we'll be able to have any say or give suggestions or maybe have meetings on what you're going to be doing and that kind of thing.
I'm gonna, Kevin, Albert, talk a little bit about what our plans are with downtown.
Yeah, one of the things that will be getting started here pretty soon, I'll be bringing the city council here before too long, is that downtown streetscape improvement. And that will be, that project, the intent of that project and our goal with that project is to make Main Street, extend that downtown area so that it includes everything between Monroe Street and Erie Street. There's been that break because of some of what you mentioned is just the type of development that's in there has kind of created that. And so our goal is to try to eliminate that break, if you will, at Maplewood, and make that whole section between Monroe and Erie Street downtown, and to do exactly what I think you're asking. So that's the goal of the streetscape project.
We spoke a little bit about this at an earlier DSA meeting, so I think stay connected with the DSA and with all these public projects. Kevin and his department always has public meeting, and we need that input, and that's going to be part of this. And again, what council is going to be looking at also.
I guess I'm just wondering why the residential homes on Summit Street have continued to be residential homes. And some of them are rental properties, but it allows for lower rental, small families to begin raising children in Sylvania and benefit from all that Sylvania has to offer. But why can't we exclude some of that affordable residential housing from the developing area? So that we keep families coming to Sylvania and we keep, not everybody can afford a $250,000 home. Not, and a 4-person family can't always stay in an apartment. So that's kind of what Sylvania has developed over the 55 years I've been here. And I don't think we should just make way for developing some of that area.
So there is a program that we haven't talked to you about tonight that can also redirect public tax. It's called Community Reinvestment Programs. The city, I believe, has 8 or 9 of them that specifically can be used just for those types of things. Promoting residential development, helping for affordable housing, helping for folks that own single family to have a portion of the new improvement that they're making, the renovation, be abated for a short period of time. So that affordable housing can be attractive for the community through that CRA program.
I guess my point was to keep the existing residents there free to buy and sell their homes as they like and not be pressured by
You're talking
Nothing.
about, you're talking about this area right here?
There's nothing, whether it's Summit Street or there's nothing that is pressuring anybody to sell to anybody. I think we've answered that. So if you're in that area, you may get approached, you may not be, and there's nobody saying you cannot sell it to your house to somebody else who wants to use it as a residence.
Can you rezone your property to residential? Can a person rezone their property from being to be residential?
Not sure what the zoning is right there.
Well, here's how that works. The owner of the property has to apply to change the zone. We don't have any of those pending.
Who approves that?
We do, city council. I'm the chair of the zoning and annexation committee.
I just wanted to follow up with what Angie said, Jen Martin again. I felt very blindsided at the last downtown meeting where we were just told that the Maplewood thing was happening. So I just wanted to also add to, like Angie was saying, like, we want to be included. Like, we want to help, we want to make sure we get the vibe that we want, looks the way we want, like, we would love to have an opinion on all of that. So I think that we've been working really hard to create a design committee for the downtown association. So to have that voice and be a part of it, we would definitely appreciate that. If you're willing to be a part of that, please. So.
Jen, again, this is just the start of the process. So there's no, again, something that we looked at, this was a recommendation from the downtown plan that we had. And this was one of the recommendations. So we're just starting the process. And again,
But the Maplewood thing is already happening. I mean,
Pardon?
we were like showing pictures of like, this is what's happening on Maplewood, right? That's already like.
Maplewood.
That's a separate thing, but like it needs to all, but then it turns.
but there were meetings and people
Okay.
were participating in those meetings and had their input for
Got it.
what happened on Maplewood.
Russell Core, 6743 Maplewood. First, I want to echo Dan's sentiments, but since nothing is written in stone as yet, I would further propose that those of us, the residentials who live in that area, and we're the most put upon in terms of street closings, traffic follow-ups because of all this, that we should actually get a tax abatement as a lot of this is going on. Our taxes should be reduced because quite frankly, our quality of life is decreasing with all of these things.
Thank you. We're here wrapping it up here real quick. And if you think of something else after tonight, like I said, I would communicate with get you a copy of the presentation that Glenn gave tonight. And but if you think of something else, please contact me at the city. We'll definitely get you an answer back. Deb, did you have something?
I definitely from 5736 Summer Street. I just wanted to clarify that you talked about the TIF taxes, and you talked about 120 parcels, those are commercial and industrial parcels, not And so the residential areas would not be included in that tip tax.
If we choose to go that way, and that's what we're kind of hearing tonight. To keep the residential out.
Okay.
Well, there's no TIF tax. There is no TIF tax. Here's how this works is you get an increase in your valuation. And the taxes that you're currently sending to the school and to TARDA and to the zoo. Okay, if your valuation goes up $2,000, okay, or let's say your valuation goes up $5,000. The taxes that you paid before still go to all those people, okay? But the taxes on that $5,000 increase comes to the city as opposed to those other folks. That's why we have to talk to the schools if we want to do a longer period, because we're taking money. We're taking money on the increase that would go to the schools. Instead, we're using it for redevelopment in the downtown area. So there's no TIF tax. So when there's a school levy though, okay, and you go out and you vote for a school levy, and then your taxes go up, it doesn't go to the schools on the increased value. It comes to the city. Okay, so there is no TIF tax. It's a redirection of the existing taxes that you're paying other places to the city.
So that residential being included in that.
I think, no, the answer to that is no.
No residential.
No residential is included.
Whether you're in the TIF or out of the TIF, there's no change to the residential.
I'm sorry,
Whether you're in the TIF or out of the TIF, there is no change to the residential.
even if we are zone commercial, like I'm a B2. So I'm not a residential zone, but I have a residential house.
Yeah, it's just on the commercial. So like, if you look at the 3-digit code, residential is a 500. We have no 500s in this category. It's just the 300s and 400s. It came up to 128 parcels for that valuation.
So if she's zone B2, she would still be a
Yeah.
500.
That's right.
Thank you, thank you very much.
Other questions?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on something you said about the schools. I did pick up on this earlier, but if the schools are going to forgive that tax money.
They don't forgive. There's no forgiving. This is changing the law.
If they're going to forego it,
Yes.
then does that mean they're going to have to come back to us more often for larger levies to make up for the decline, the decrease that they would get not getting the taxes?
There will be revenue that the city will be getting that the schools won't.
Part of the clarification is which TIF, the duration that if we do it, how long? If it's a 30-year TIF, then we have to work out a deal with the schools. I think we're going to work with the schools any way that we can. And it's, again, they're going to maintain on that one chart you saw what they're getting now. It's not like they're getting, it's on the increase.
Let me try to address that, Bill, because I've actually looked at this. That's a good question, sir. The Sylvania School District spends about $90 million a year on their budget. $90 million a year. If we do this under the 75-25, about 50 cents of every dollar of your property taxes goes to the schools. It might be 55, might be 48, but it's about 50 cents on the dollar. So in this particular case, what we're talking about is over a 10-year period of time, we would raise about 800 grand. About $200,000 of that, $200,000 or $300,000 would not go to the schools, which would otherwise have gone to the schools. And over that 10-year period of time, they're going to spend somewhere on the order of $900 million. So theoretically, you're absolutely correct. There's monies that aren't going to be there, but it's not enough money to make a material difference to their decisions.
Okay, thank you.
And I think to go on that, there is a benefit to the school system to have a developing downtown. And when there's improvements and people want to move here, and it's better for the overall community, more people are going to want to live here and invest here, and that will also affect what they get.
And at the end of the TIF, those increased property values and the increased taxes go entirely to the schools. They're made whole.
Right, well, that might be our last question.
This development idea is great. I'm T 5768. But my concern is, what are we doing about the parking? The parking here is atrocious. And my business after 6 becomes municipal. So at this point, I don't want to be reliable for my parking lot after hours. So where are we at with the parking situation?
That would fall into the category of how we use the TIF dollars, and that's a great, thing.
Is there a plan for parking?
Well, we're going to continue to look at it as we develop and things do develop in downtown. So it's definitely one of the things when we first met with the consultant, she talked about a parking garage, whether that's something feasible, that's something. So yes, we always have to talk about where we go with parking.
Is there a thought that after 6 o'clock, my private parking can become municipal, so I'm no longer liable? Or should I chain off my parking lot to keep the people from parking?
We can talk again. We've talked before, and we'd be glad to talk to you more about that. Carmen?
Just real quick, Carmen Wigman's 5633 North Main Street, Rhode Salon. I have 55 employees. We sometimes have 100, 150 customers coming through a day. It's about 2,000 to 3,000 a month. So we drive a lot of business to downtown Sylvania. The parking, it's been an issue since I bought my building. And it's been the same. Our employees park at the courthouse lot and they walk across the parking tracks or the railroad tracks. So I would definitely be for some kind of parking project, some kind of infrastructure to help support everything that we want to do in downtown Sylvania. All the new business we want to bring down here. Anybody who would want to attract would be looking at the parking. So.
Great, good point. But Carmen, you brought that up, and thank you, because I still see your employees every day, so that you consistently have had your people park over here and they cross the railroad tracks, and that keeps this lot right out here open for customers. So
It doesn't take care of it all the time though. We still get complaints that there's not enough parking.
Right.
And the restaurant next door is busy and at certain times the parking lot's full. And once all these restaurants get back to more full capacity and are open later, it will be more of an issue as well.
well noted, but thank you.
When would be the soonest project that would happen from this TIF? What would be the soonest? Would it be in a year, 2 years, 3 years? Are we talking?
We'll have to get back to you with, and that's what we'll turn it over to the council and start talking to them about the timing and some things. So we've got to get that. I don't know if that'll go to a committee first, but stay tuned. We will keep you posted on all that information as we go through. I want to wrap things up here. I think it's been a very good meeting. Thanks for coming. If you've got follow-up questions, don't hesitate to let us know. Council, we all want to hear your thoughts on this. And the next step will be the consideration of establishing the TIF, what type of TIF, and then the whole time would be in that. With that, we'll conclude our meeting here tonight. Again, thank you all for coming, and we'll take a little break here, and then council meeting's going to start.